We'll call this hearing to order, public hearing to order. The Macon County Board of Commissioners, this is to do with the proposed subdivision ordinance amendment. Public hearing was scheduled to begin at 6:30, and as we announced earlier, that would be postponed to the end of the first hearing. We do have a number of speakers signed up for this one as well, and we will move through this. If you happen to come in late, I read our county procedures, and we'll give each person 3 minutes to speak. We will give you up to 3 minutes, and we will use that time to hear what you have to say. We have Mr. Mike Jackson. Let's do this. I want to have Chester read this ordinance. If you would, Chester, at this time, let me give you the microphone. Please.
All right. Again, this is a draft amendment. The purpose of it is for discussion this evening. Amendment to subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon, North Carolina, that whereas the Macon County Board of Commissioners adopted the subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon, North Carolina.
A little closer, Chuck. They can't hear you. A little closer.
Let me start over. Amendment to the subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon, North Carolina, that whereas the Macon County Board of Commissioners adopted the subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon, North Carolina on or about January 25, 2010. And whereas the Board of Commissioners wishes to make an amendment to section 159.56 of the subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon, North Carolina, as set forth below. And whereas the Board of Commissioners finds the same to be in the public interest and to promote the public health, safety, and welfare pursuant to authority vested in it by North Carolina General Statute, section 153A-121. And whereas the amendment set forth hereinafter is authorized by the provisions of North Carolina General Statute, section 153A-323, now therefore be it ordained by the Macon County Board of Commissioners that section 159.56 of the subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon, North Carolina, and as it presently exists, is hereby amended as follows. The following language is hereby deleted from section 159.56 of the subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon, North Carolina. Quote, slope hazard designation as indicated on the Macon County slope hazard maps, end quote. This amendment of the subdivision ordinance of the County of Macon is adopted and effective on blank 2012.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chester. And we'll begin the hearing at this point. And in case you came in and weren't here for the first hearing, we'd ask you to identify yourself and also tell your place of residence, if you would. We'll begin. I think the first name was Mike Jackson. Mike.
So again, my name is Mike Jackson. I live in Franklin, and I want to just try to make some brief comments regarding these amendments that are before you. I think, like most people in this room, I believe in free markets. I believe in capitalism. And we probably don't have to review all of this, but just for giggles, I want to just kind of review some of the components that make that such a powerful force. And then there are three basic things. You have rational agents, or people who are going to act in their own self-interest and try to make decisions that are going to benefit them when they're making decisions. And then you have competition, and you also need to have information. So when people have all the information, when consumers or buyers have the information, they can make an informed decision that's going to serve their interest. And then what that does is put pressure on the competitors, the people competing for their business, to make sure that they're innovating new products, that they're bringing quality products to market, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that this move to hide the maps or to move the maps from any mention within the county deprives people of information, and ultimately information is freedom. So by removing that information, you're taking people's freedom away from their ability to make good purchasing decisions. Consumers, people like the Olivers who are coming here, who want to live here, build a house here, they need to have that information to be able to make a good decision. They're living with the decision that they've made now because they didn't have all the information. It's because I believe in markets that I referenced earlier that I haven't been committed only to an ordinance in regard to the slope debate. I think that there's a real place to talk about how the market could help to solve some of these problems we've done without using this board in any fashion. Some people that are on my side may disagree, but I still think that there's a discussion to be had there. Now, just before I left the office today, I had a conversation with our accountant who's evaluating some vendors in our office. And she said, you know, I have this guy, he goes to my church, and, or, you know, he knows a guy that goes to my church, and I have a connection to him. I really want to use him. But he just seems like he's not giving me all the information. And I have this other guy over here, and I don't really know him, but he's giving me the information. I feel much more comfortable in that situation. I think that the problems we run into with the slope maps come when we try to hide that information and then people find out on the back end. It looks bad. Better to be up front, say, this is what they are, this is what they do and don't do, this is how they can be of value to you, and that alleviates some of those concerns. I would encourage you to not delete this language from the subdivision ordinance and to reconsider your positions as they relate to those maps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Next we have Vic Drummond.
Good evening again. My name is Vic Drummond, 536 Timbercrest Drive in Franklin. I urge you to adopt the proposed amendment to the subdivision ordinance to remove the specified sentence. Sometime in June of 2010, the downslope hazard map of Macon County, published in 2006 by the North Carolina Geological Survey, was briefly integrated into the county's GIS system and removed a month later. In an article dated July 23, 2010, in the Franklin Press, titled "Slope Maps Removed from County Website," Derek Rowland, our county planner, was reported as saying, quote, "They had determined through research that while the maps were valuable tools, they are designed to serve as a guide for general areas rather than taking that down to a parcel level." Continuing with the quote, Rowland explained that the North Carolina Geological Survey maps are not an official county document. Continuing on, he's quoted, "We've acknowledged the fact that it will take additional research before we can incorporate them into the GIS site." He added that in the future, if the county does proceed with an ordinance that incorporates the maps, it would not be without public input and the extensive research necessary to incorporate the maps into Macon GIS. That's the end of the quote. So if this was the county's position in July 2010, why wasn't the sentence being considered for removal tonight not removed then? I hope you remove this sentence tonight. It is certainly long overdue. Since June 2010, I have done a lot of research into the methodology used to create this map. Why? Because I found that portions of my home and lot are supposedly in a high or moderate downslope hazard area on the map. Now for a very controversial sentence. In my opinion, the map borders on being junk science. The map is based on an oversimplified mathematical formula called, quote, "stability of infinite slopes with seepage," end of quote, to try to predict through a computer program what is going to happen in the natural process of erosion of the mountains of Macon County after a 6-inch rain over a 24-hour period.
Okay, you got 3 minutes.
Am I at 3 minutes?
According to our terms. You can finish your thoughts.
If I may, I just want to say that I will unequivocally state that there aren't powerful enough computers or smart enough scientists in this world to predict with accuracy what is going to happen or when it will happen as our mountains continue to naturally erode. Even the North Carolina Geological Survey implies the dubious value of the map when it includes the following disclaimer of liability on the map itself. Quote, "These products, however, are intended to serve for general plan purposes only and are provided on an as-is basis." It's an unfortunate this downslope hazard map can't be made to go away, but whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, it will be around forevermore. I think the county needs to remove all references to the map unless it wants to find itself trying to defend its usage in court. Property owners have suffered financially with its improper application by potential buyers. I hope the tax assessor figures out how to determine, quote, comparable values if this map continues to be referred to in this or any other county ordinance. I urge you to remove the specified sentence. Thank you.
Next, we have Lonnie Cruz. Lonnie? What's that?
Come around here, it's right here.
Oh, okay. Gotcha, okay. Okay, we have Don Swanson.
Gentlemen, I'll give back some of Mr. Grumman's time. He speaks for me. He has researched the situation thoroughly, spoke intelligently. I encourage you to act and pass the proposed amendment relative to the subdivision ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. We have Norrell Kirkland.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. I'm Norrell Kirkland. I live out by the airport here in Franklin. Agreed. I am really pleased to see and say that that is not an element here we have to worry about in our county. Even the wealthiest person who lives in this county bends over backwards to make life one of quality for all of us. But when you do something that threatens our livelihood, our ability to make a living, to even just get by, well, you're going to find very, very strong reaction. And that certainly is evident by the turnout tonight. On the other hand, none of us want to be negligent or contribute to death. And so it behooves us not to build in places that are very risky. Having been here for 11 years and a former lawyer who was very involved with major negligence cases, sometimes involving as many as 400 houses sliding down mountain slopes, I have seen negligence that goes way beyond what we've experienced here in Macon County. But I can truthfully say that the burden is on you to make a wise decision for the good of all of us, not just particular interest groups. So I charge you, bring out regulations that make very clear all information to a prospective buyer. Don't let the real estate agents cover up things that a buyer would not be able to understand. And they will thank you in the long run for being honest and enabling them to make a wise decision. After all, these regulations do not say you can't build here. They simply say there may be a danger, something else from the normal. You should consider hire an engineer and get a professional opinion.
Thank you, Norrell. Next, we have David Culpepper.
Hello again, David Culpepper, Patton Valley again. I love maps, period, and I think this map is really pretty to look at. I don't think it should be used for legislative purposes. as I think it's Miss Oliver pointed out, talking about how the subdivision ordinance is good. I think it actually should be used as an example of how government legislation and regulation actually fails the people, because it's provided to guarantee some sort of safety and that the subdivision will become a proper subdivision, and it clearly hasn't. So your legislating of the subdivision ordinance has failed, just like most government regulation ends up failing. I would not use the maps for legislative purposes because the science is bunk, and I believe there's a gentleman sitting up here right now whose house is directly in the path of one of these red lines on this map. And I think he would argue that the map is bunk as well. Thank you very much.
David? Miss,
Oh,
thank you.
it's all right, no problem.
Miss Kathy Kinsley.
I didn't know this was gonna be coming up tonight, but it's something I feel really strongly about. And in regard to these maps, I'll try to be brief. We're extremely fortunate to have these. Some counties are spending money to get their maps done, and we were able to get it done under the wire, and we have, they're a tool. Last night's weather map wasn't absolutely accurate, but it gave us a way to sort of predict what might be on the ground this morning. And they are one of many tools that can be used. You don't throw away information and not use it. As a teacher, I can't imagine telling students they couldn't have one bit of information to solve a problem. And so this one really for me is, I feel strongly about it, maybe more than term limits. But as a taxpayer, I don't want this information to be hidden and not addressed. So I would ask you to not adopt this amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Tinsley. Michelle Maston?
I was not able to finish, but I am a resident of Macon County. My address is 129 Golden Falls Boulevard. I also own and pay taxes on over $10 million worth of real estate in this county, and own 2 businesses. So I believe
What do you think about that, Bill?
She said you wasn't a resident.
Fill her in now.
Okay.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I just wanted to let you know that, and also that I agree in adopting to remove those maps off the record there. Thank you.
Thank you. James Birch?
Thank you. I've been listening to a lot of things. I used to go to some of the meetings. I sort of gave up because I strongly believe that the real estate, we can make these meetings all we want to. We can do them for another 50 years, but as long as real estate controls the county and made it to where my kids can never build, my grandkids, because it's priced out, it was priced out, they have a monopoly. Nobody participates in real estate. It's not even democratic. It's not even democratic in Appalachian Mountains, because real estate might have been all right in big cities, but when it moved to these Appalachian Mountains, it was a disaster. You got a few people that's made a lot of money out of it. They monopolize the price. They move the prices up with the buyer and the seller. And the lower income people, even the middle class people, never have a chance to buy a piece of land no more to build. The steep slope, there's 4 lots right above me, 5 lots, it's back up for sale again. And if someone builds that and buys those lots and tries to build on them, it's going to wash me out down below. It's going to ruin my water in the place where I've lived for years. It's wrong. It's morally wrong. It shouldn't be allowed. We're not a part of it no more. Most of the people ain't. Real estate is the worst thing that ever happened and came into these mountains. The worst thing that ever happened. It should be made illegal and go back between the buyer and the seller. And it ain't going to get no better. They're greedy, that sell the mother off. I hate it. What it's become. I grew up here. I don't even feel a part of it no more.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. That was, that concludes the speakers we had to sign up for that. Anyone else? Got any? Gentlemen, we can ask questions, we'll discuss this now. We can do some now, some later. We have it on the agenda to take up in the latter part of the agenda. Any commissioner have anything to add to that at this point? I have some questions I'd like to ask you planning guys. We can do that later. Okay. Jack? We can. We'll do it. Okay, we'll need to, if that's all the comment, we will close that hearing. And thanks to each of you who spoke. We now take up the third comment period. And I know we do have the 911 dispatch procedures for towing. We have Lloyd Cox and Walter Hunter that signed up in advance. I guess they would actually be on the agenda under that. So let me go ahead and recognize you guys at this time. Is Lloyd? Yeah, come on, Lloyd.
Question number one, am I going to be limited to 3 minutes?
You've got 5.
5? Okay,
That was the hearing, and the public comment, according to the board, has always been 5 minutes.
Okay, because I've got a written statement here. I figured it'd speed it up a little bit. My name is Lloyd Cox. My wife and I own Ambassador Automotive here in Franklin. I'm speaking tonight at the request of the group behind me. The group represents the majority of the towing companies here in Franklin. Tonight, we'd like to bring to your attention an ongoing situation regarding how towing companies are dispatched when there is a vehicle accident or incident requiring towing by the Macon County Sheriff's Department. Over the last 2 years, the majority of us have experienced a huge drop in the amount of tow calls we receive from 911 in the town and the county. Over the same period of time, one particular towing company has received a large increase in their numbers. We have obtained copies from the Macon County 911 dispatch records for December 4th through 2010 through February 1st, 2012. Printouts show how many calls each towing company has received during this period. Now, I've got some handout here for you gentlemen I'd like for you each to have because it backs up the statements that I'm making tonight. There's only one copy of this, but there's one here.
Gentlemen, there's only one copy of this that you'll need to share.
Okay, Mr. Cox.
Okay, on the first graph, the blue indicates Macon County 911 dispatch calls. Ambassador Automotive received 31, Davis Towing 21, Drake's Towing 41, Franklin Body Shop 48, James Paint and Body 34, Mark's Recovery and Collision 25, Nathan's Paint and Body 76 calls. We also received requested towing dispatch information from North Carolina Highway Patrol to compare the results. The Highway Patrol's reports are from the January 1st, 2011 through January 31st, 2012. The information is graphed in red. Ambassador Automotive responded to 37 calls, Davis Towing 22 calls, Drake's Towing 34, Franklin Paint and Body 30, James Paint and Body 37, Mark's Collision Recovery 19, Nathan's Paint and Body 33. Ambassador Automotive and James Paint and Body are on both small and heavy-duty wrecker rotation, where all of the other towing companies have small wreckers only. Also, Mark's Recovery and Collision and Davis Towing were not on rotation for the entire period of time reported. The second graph represents calls by agency to each towing company. As you can see, the Highway Patrol calls per company are very close in numbers as opposed to the calls dispatched through 911. Macon County Sheriff's Department typically does not dispatch a towing company for a wreck. The North Carolina Highway Patrol dispatches records for accidents in the county. The Sheriff's Department does handle tow dispatch calls for traffic stops, abandoned, stolen, disabled, and seized vehicles or equipment. In our opinion, many of these calls are being steered directly to Nathan's Paint and Body. These calls to Nathan's Paint and Body from Macon County 911 only reflect the tow calls that were issued through dispatch. It does not include calls made directly to Nathan's Paint and Body by cell phone or verbal contact at the scene. You may be thinking, what's the big deal about about a tow call? The average tow call is about $150. The initial tow is the only beginning for most calls. The people behind me own body shops or repair shops. These tows represent the opportunity to repair disabled or damaged vehicles. These tow calls represent thousands of dollars in record fees, storage repairs, revenue obtained when abandoned vehicles are sold or disposed of. Dollars needed for these body shops or repair shops to provide for their families, pay employees, and continue to do business in Franklin and Macon County. We feel Nathan's Paint and Body is getting an increased call for a couple of different reasons. Nathan Hersey, owner of Nathan's Paint and Body, is a volunteer fireman. This places him at the scene of many traffic incidents. Ryan Hersey, Nathan's brother, works for Macon County as an EMT, placing him at the scene of many accidents. Ryan Hersey also drives a tow truck for Nathan's Paint and Body. As you will see from the 911 printouts, for 76 calls to Nathan, on some calls, the notes indicate Nathan's Paint and Body was called prior to dispatch even being notified of the need for a record. In other words, Nathan's was contacted directly by the officer at the scene. As best we can determine, 14 calls were issued to Nathan's Paint and Body directly by officer's request. That shows on the papers that I gave you. We feel allowing tow company owners, relatives, or employees to work an incident scene allows that one towing company to create friendships that may steer business in their direction. The people that own towing companies behind me can wrote accounts where their customers were denied the request for their tow trucks and were told their vehicle was being towed by Nathan's Paint and Body. I have a notarized statement from one of Ambassador's customers stating they requested Ambassador Automotive to tow their vehicle, and the vehicle was recovered, and that request was denied, and the vehicle was recovered towed by Nathan's Paint and Body. We also have listed the accident information on police scanners. We all have listened to accident information on police scanners where the words owner's request were never mentioned. No towing company was called, but the vehicle or all the vehicles involved were towed by Nathan's Paint and Body, indicating Nathan's Paint and Body was already at the scene. We have eyewitness accounts on several occasions where Nathan's Paint and Body was at the scene of an accident, no other record company was called, and these vehicles were towed by his company. Also, after reviewing 911 records, it seems very unrealistic that a driver from Georgia, South Carolina, Missouri, or even California would make an owner's request for Nathan's Paint and Body rather than the next rotation. Allowing a tow company owner, operator, or employee to work the scene of an incident puts that one towing company at an advantage over the other towing companies. It is our opinion Sheriff Holland endorsing Nathan's Paint and Body on his Facebook can easily lead to the public as well as the county employees to believe that Nathan's Paint and Body is a record company of choice for the Macon County Sheriff's Department. Now, you'll see the picture I supplied you where it was endorsed. When one towing company is shown preference, it may seem harmless, but it hurts many others. To be placed on the 911 rotation call of towing companies are informed they must meet North Carolina Highway Patrol criteria. In other words, if you're on rotation with Highway Patrol, you can be placed on the 911 record rotation with the county and the city. Also, if you're removed from the Highway Patrol rotation, you are removed from 911. The county is in essence using the Highway Patrol as a guide. I've got a copy, and I won't read this. It's a directive from the Highway Patrol saying who can be on rotation, how you can stay on rotation, and you cannot have any financial interest if you're a patrolman, brother, sister, uncle, cousin, whatever, or work for the patrol to be on rotation. Each of these companies have made changes to remain profitable during these difficult economic times. Expenses have been cut, prices adjusted, new marketing strategy has been applied, employees have been laid off, and equipment has been sold. These are difficult times without the hardship of losing our market share of two customers being influenced to trade with one certain tow company or authority figures manipulating a situation for a friend in the towing business. We are here tonight to ask for your help in restoring a fair and impartial rotation system to Macon County 911. Past complaints to Sheriff Holland by letter and phone calls from several people sitting behind me have produced no change in how the towing companies are called, how they are called by Macon County 911. Since our meeting with the town alderman last Monday, we are happy to see that Sheriff Holland has been quoted in the Macon County News assuring everyone that this problem has been addressed. North Carolina Patrol Directive allows for deviation rotations under certain circumstances. That's also in there. I won't get into that because I'm running out of time. As the Highway Patrol numbers reflect on the second graph provided, there seems to have been no deviation whatsoever during the last year. It is our opinion that the citizens of Macon County deserve the Macon County Sheriff's Department to be held to the same high standards of impartiality as that of the North Carolina Highway Patrol. On an occasion, snowy conditions, and the Sheriff's Department is working these accidents. A vehicle accident is a very frightening experience, even if there are no injuries. The person in the accident is upset, scared. There is not the time for an officer, firefighter, or EMT to take advantage of someone by influencing them to make a decision that profits someone they know. We are here tonight to ask each of you to review the material being provided and take necessary steps to model, adopt, and enforce a county ordinance regarding towing dispatch like the one of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, to include the following. Only an officer at the scene communicate with dispatch regarding the vehicle, owner's, or operator's request regarding a tow company, either a specific company requested by the company or next rotation. Strict guidelines regarding impartial use of towing services in regard to impounded vehicles. Mandatory use of a form detailing which towing service was called for each incident and make this form a public record. Prohibit towing company, owners, relatives, and employees from working or volunteering with any emergency service. Adopt an ordinance of this nature will restore fairness and impartiality for all. Thank you again, gentlemen, for listening to me go on and on and on. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord. So we did give you a little extra time. I conferred with our attorney, and since you had actually requested to be on the agenda, we gave you a little extra time. So
Just stay around, Lord, and ask
Yeah,
the question.
okay.
Is Miss Drake here? Miss Drake coming?
No, I'm Drake's told.
She had called me earlier today about a letter she wanted read. Are you gonna read that letter?
It's submitted.
Oh, hit it.
It is submitted.
Where,
Maybe in this package here.
is it in the packet that he gave us?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of that. Thank you. Thank you. Robbie, was there any other?
Yeah, Mr. Hunter's in the back.
Okay, Mr. Hunter?
Oh, I didn't turn in the list, did I?
No, I don't know if anybody else
Hello, I'm Walter Hunter. I'm here to represent my business tonight. It's Franklin Body Shop. I do not own a scanner, and I don't listen to 911 calls. I'm a businessman trying to survive in a tough economy. I have no personal conflicts with any of the other towing services in Macon County. I am here strictly because of the unfairness in the way towing calls have been assigned under the pretense of owner's requests. Customarily, towing companies are called to the accident on a rotation basis. This allows every record owner an opportunity to earn a living. Each company has regular customers who want that towing service, and the owner's request is always accepted of the rotation call. Those having no preference are assigned the next rotation service. North Carolina Highway Patrol uses the rotation system effectively and impartially. The data from this shows each company receives almost equal amounts of calls. The number represents both rotation and owner request calls. The distribution of the calls is not skewed, leading to the conclusion Highway Patrol reports an accident and makes no recommendation nor allows anyone to solicit business for a particular towing company. This is not true for the calls from Macon County Dispatch Service. From December 2010 to February 2012, according to the data, Nathan's Paint and Body has received many more calls than its fair share. I can only conclude some outside source is influencing which company is called to an accident. Otherwise, Macon County data would be real similar to North Carolina Highway Patrol. I'm concerned with the information recorded by the Macon County Dispatch, and I'm more concerned with a number I suspect have no paper trail to follow because Nathan has been called by cell phones. I believe there are tow calls that are not being reported because they did not go through the dispatch office. It is highly probable this has happened many times over the past. My company, as well as others, have qualified for the Highway Patrol rotation list. If there is a problem with any of the towing services that results in reluctance to use that company, those concerns should be addressed with that individual company. Perceived problems should not be used as an excuse to give any company an unfair advantage. I realize if any officer at the accident scene makes a suggestion the accident victims would accept those recommendations. My question is, why would an officer want to recommend one company over mine? I've always thought the law is supposed to protect us, the rights of all the citizens. The financial ramifications of these actions affect my business more than meaning I lose the charge for towing. My company has potential to make money from storage and the vehicles as well as making repairs. Each towing call is usually worth approximately $150, up to a maximum of several $1,000s if repairs are made. The 8 people I employ and their families depend on my company getting a fair share. January 2011, I personally brought this problem to the attention of 2 officials who told me they wouldn't be able to solve it. Their solution was to warn the officers about the practice of recommending a particular service and to issue a sign-off sheet to be completed at the scene of accident if there was an owner's request. Those were good ideas, but evidently they were not followed up on. After I reported the problem and was assured it was solved, I did not feel it was my position to monitor the situation that somebody needs to. I've compiled the data I've received from various sources in the graphs that I'll give you. Please look at this data. I regret this continues to be a problem, but I hope those in charge will follow through with a solution now that the problem has been presented to the board. I'm aware the board has a limited authority over many of the decisions that are made. I'm also aware the board can influence the decisions and does have funding authority which can encourage that the correct decisions are made. Please think on this issue and help level the playing field for all involved. Please let me know what you decide. I encourage you to look at all this information and the other information handed to you. Thank you very much.
Let me just say that I was the one that Walter, we tackled this 2 years ago, correct, Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, and last year also.
And last year also, and we have worked on it, and we will, what we decided then, as you'll hear the sheriff speak to shortly, the county has no obligation to do a rotation. But if we're going to do one, we need to do it fairly. We need to do it right. And I think we'll all agree to that, and I think that's what you hear tonight. I have a lot of respect for Walter Hunter. He's been a long-term businessman in this community. Would not be here tonight unless there was a problem, I'll assure you. You've never saw Walter Hunter to me. And if it wasn't affecting his business and a truly problem, I think the sheriff will speak to that too. So Walter, as a personal, for me, as a personal friend, I appreciate you being here and bringing this to your attention. I'm sorry it had to come to this again, but it will be monitored more closely. I will take partial responsibility just like anybody else, Walter. And because of respect to you and the business of your family that's been in business here for over 70 years in Macon County, we appreciate what you've done for this community, and we'll talk about that more here shortly. Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Walter. We have next signed up under public comment, William Dewey Gunning.
Thank you one more time. I have the desire to understand what's going on with our guru that's doing the trying to encourage businesses to come in here, and I would like to have some way of knowing what's being done. I haven't really gotten any pertinent information on that lately. Learned a long time ago that if all I do is stand around and be negative, make negative comments, that maybe I am the problem, or at least part of the problem. So I support you guys, and I support your everybody who's involved, your lawyer and our county manager here. Am I correct in that? And y'all just keep working at it, and I'm in your corner.
Thank you. Thank you. You just clarify, you were talking about the EDC, Economic Development Coordinator, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, right.
When that changed hands, I think these guys will agree with this. We asked that that job is under the EDC. Of course, that falls under our responsibility as well. But we ask for a monthly, I believe, Mr.
Get a monthly report.
Mr. Manager, we get a monthly report on activities, what's going on, updates, that kind of thing, and that certainly would be available, I would think. It would be public record. So if you'd like to get a copy of that, if you'll see Mr. Horton, I'd be glad to provide you that. We did ask for that as a board. We wanted a monthly report on activities, even though we put that person on a contract basis. They're not a direct employee, but
It's not that I have any great answers, but I like to know what's going on.
Sure.
Because we simply got to put people back to work.
that was one thing we
Don't
discussed.
change the economy, let's put people back to work.
Mr. Manager, is it possible to create a little EDC corner on the webpage with that monthly?
Well, actually, the Economic Development Commission, through Tommy Jenkins, is creating a new website, updated website, because that'll be one of the things.
You could link to it, we could link to it.
It'll be a link from the county's website to the EDC.
You couldn't hear that, we're in the process of developing a website for EDC. And Mr. Gunn, we couldn't agree with you more. At our board retreat back in January, of course, the planning board discussion got all the press, and I understand that, but one of the main things we discussed there was our commitment. It's about jobs and the economy, and that's got to be something. It's hard for a county commission to create jobs, and we're so dependent on the federal, what's going on nationally and in our state. But we want to do everything we can do to help create jobs here. So we're in the same corner.
You're right, we're there with you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we go back to that? Can we finish the discussion on the towing before we get into the rest of the?
Well, we're just going through the public comment.
But they were on the agenda.
Well, they were under public comment, Mr.
I don't know
Attorney.
why that is.
Why was that? We certainly can. Can we continue
I
discussion
mean,
on that?
we're just gonna be going back and
Consensus
forth.
of the board to continue discussion on that, certainly.
So that's fine with me.
I would suggest that, Mr. Chairman, there's several folks here would like to speak to that while these folks are here. Some of them
Okay.
have commitments.
And some of these people, I made the assumption that the rest of the folks that were here, that we're gonna talk about the towing. And it's okay, Mr. Gunn, that you didn't talk about that. Let's, I will do that. Why don't we move anyone that's wanting to talk about the towing issue? Austin Brooks, James Birch, Bruce Owen, owner, Sabre Scott, Jimmy Goodman, or Lonnie Cruz. Any of you guys here to talk about the towing? No.
All
Bruce Oliver.
That's Bruce, sorry. We're not there yet.
Were you here to talk about the towing, Mr. Oliver? No, okay. All right. Yes. Okay. Sabre Scott.
I just want to say, I think the law that Mr. Cox was talking about, I don't think it's a very good law. There's a lot of people that will lose their jobs, as far as Ryan Hersey could lose his job. Sorry, I'm nervous. I don't talk in front of people that much.
Okay, go right ahead.
This is what the towing companies are complaining about as far as, losing jobs, losing money. Well, if they bring this law in, they're doing the same thing to these other families. There's got to be something else that can be done. As far as his reference against Mr. Holland, our sheriff, I think he's wrong. I don't think Mr. Holland would ever have his employees call a certain person. Robbie is very respectful as far as everybody in Macon County goes. He takes a lot of crap from a lot of people.
Technical
I'm sorry?
That's a technical term.
It's okay, don't let it.
Trust me, we understand that one.
Sorry.
That just helped you relax a little bit.
Yeah, as far as a lot of the other officers go, I know a lot of them. I don't think that they are taken, partial to Mr. Nathan or Nathan. I know Nathan very well. I've known Nathan since he's been very young. I have nothing against the other towing companies, but for one person. If I'm in a wreck and I say the person from, I think he said California, these other places, and I ask the officer
do you have someone that you would trust? If they said Nathan's, then of course I'll go with Nathan. If they was to say this one specific person, and I took my vehicle to this person and was messed over or whatever from past that has happened, I'd be very upset with that officer. If I ever seen that officer again, I promise, I would say something to that officer. Now, as far as the rotation goes, I agree with the rotation. The rotation should happen for fairness and all of the, for everybody making money and that kind of thing. But if you bring this law in, there's many people that's gonna lose their jobs, and a lot of good volunteer fire department, a lot of good paramedics, a lot of the towing companies have people that are in volunteer, and I just don't think that law should be brought in.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Was there anyone else that had intended to speak to this issue that was here? And if not, I'm going to ask Ronnie as our liaison to the sheriff's department.
Well, I'm sure the sheriff would like to speak to it. He has several of his officers here tonight, and also, I think Todd Siegel is here from 911.
We do have Todd, and I think
Todd, if you'll come up, Dave Key is here somewhere, EMS director. He was here.
There he is. So if you gentlemen would address that issue.
Robbie, you would like those gentlemen to address it, and then what we've talked about and intent? Or y'all address it together?
It's your call. I'd like to speak. I think it'd probably be appropriate for me to go ahead and speak now.
Okay, that's fine.
If that's okay with you.
Let me just say that what we've talked about.
Okay.
Sheriff. When this was brought back to our attention, I received a call from one tow truck driver last Friday. I think that's right. A week ago Friday, maybe now, I don't know. Saying that the situation had not improved. I contacted the sheriff right away. He began an investigation into that. I talked to some other tow truck drivers to see if that was the case, and that's how they felt. The ones I talked to, Walter Hunter agreed. And so the sheriff, as liaison to the sheriff's department, I did talk to the sheriff, and he started an investigation of his own. We did have we thought we'd had it settled. We thought everything was fine, but now, Sheriff, I'll let you pick it up from there.
Okay, and I apologize for any corrections that I'm about to make to you, but actually I initiated my part of the investigation before you called me, and then after you called me, the new information came in, and we were able to go in another direction as well. So I had received information based on rumors, okay? And so I was looking at, and a lot of the things that I have to look into are based on rumors. I heard some rumbling going on that we weren't following procedure. I'm not like a lot of politicians. I'm not like a lot of administrators. I will not stand up here and tell you tonight, just as I did not last week when this subject was brought up with the town of Franklin. I'm not going to hide the fact that there were some mistakes made. Whether that's 100 or 500 does not matter to me. To these guys, the record service, that does matter, okay? But whether it was 1 or 500 accidents that we requested a tow truck doesn't matter. My policy was not followed that I set in place a year ago. When Walter Hunter had contacted me in last week at the Alderman meeting, I misspoke, and I even said that it was a year before that. He corrected me after the meeting, and I had time to think about it, and I in fact called him that evening to tell him I was wrong. You're right, it was March of last year. Having said that, the professional thing to have done for all these record service would have been to call. There's many people that are sitting in here today for talking about planning. Gosh, and I wish I was talking about planning. But they have called me with different situations, and they have met with me at my office. And I have sat down with them and I have talked to them. There's many people in here that have called me at home. I've talked to them about their issues. I have been available to the citizens of Macon County since day one. And not one time, with the exception of one a couple of years ago, has any of these record service drivers, business owners, whatever, have not been in my office to complain. Yes, I've talked on the phone a couple of times to some of them, but not a single one of them has given me the professional courtesy of coming in, sitting down with me. Walter Hunter got up here and spoke. I'm not disagreeing with a word he said. In fact, 2 hours before I had my meeting with my officers to go over the situation again, because I found errors that my officers were making. Mr. Cox, I was not making those errors. My officers were. And tomorrow, I may have an officer make a mistake. Next month, I may have an officer make mistakes. We're not perfect. But we are man enough to stand up last week, as well as this week, to take full responsibility. You took partial responsibility. I appreciate that. When the fact of the matter is, I am 100% responsible for everything that my officers do, whether I like that or not. I take full responsibility. I apologize to Mr. Hunter and any of the other record services that feel like that we have purposely, or I have purposely, or anybody in my agency has purposely taken from their business. Mr. Hunter can ask any one of my command staff. He was a direct example, because a lot of my command staff have no idea who Walter Hunter is. Walter Hunter has never done anything to my agency or anybody on my department, and I feel for him, and I apologize, and that's why I was man enough last week, and I'm man enough tonight to say we've made mistakes. A year ago, I created a new form, just as they were talking about they wish we had done, or I think it was Mr. Hunter that mentioned that. We did implement a new form. 2 hours prior to the meeting that we had with the aldermen, when the same complaints came up, I had another meeting, and I've updated that form. And part of that form is that each of my officers, anytime that they call the next rotation, which we follow the guidelines, we follow the rotation list of the Highway Patrol. Whoever is on their list, and I know there's some record services here tonight that are not on that list, we won't be calling you. We call and have been calling the next rotation of the people that are approved by the Highway Patrol. And to be honest with you, the reason we do that is I don't want to have to come to you and ask for more money to hire another position to go around and determine how big their fencing is, how tall it is, what equipment is carried on that. I'm not in the record business, and I don't want to be in the record business. I've eaten record service for the past week. I don't want to be in the record business. I want to do the right thing. So that's why we have been following the procedures of the towing rotation list of the Highway Patrol. I can assure you that while mistakes have been made, I have now made sure that we've implemented a new procedure to make sure that none of these things, and I can't even guarantee it won't happen again, but there's steps that I have taken to make sure that hopefully this doesn't happen. But if it does, I will be able to catch it. And I had a million things that I'd like to say, but I can't say them all. Since our meeting, we've also met with the chief. I've met with the chief of police, which he's what you call a lame duck. He's on his way out. So I've already got a scheduled meeting with the new chief next Monday. I've also met with Jimmy Teams and Mr. Key and Mr. Siegel, and we're planning on getting together, especially when the new chief comes in, and putting all of our heads together to come up with a protocol. Like Ms. Scott said, I don't want to put anything into place that's going to jeopardize the livelihood of any other organization, firemen, first responders. So I don't want to implement a policy that I'm going to have to go back and change. But the procedures that I've placed should be good procedures until the meantime of when we have this meeting. Having said that, you all know that it's my responsibility to set policy in my agency. It's solely my responsibility. Yes, you are the financial funding to me. I understand that completely. But there's a couple of individuals, a couple of record services that have continued. My guys deserve, and by the way, none of my guys have been asked to be here. I didn't ask a single officer to be here. They're here on their own. My guys deserve the respect. They don't need, and of course that respect is also earned, and I understand that. But I don't need, and we don't need, and we need to support our officers, that people can't be out here making up vicious lies that I can prove are lies. I don't need people being out here saying terrible things that my officers are doing, and they're continuing to do so since I addressed this meeting last Tuesday or Monday with the aldermen. And I'm telling them right here and now publicly, Larry Davis of Davis Towing and Lloyd Cox of Ambassador, I will not tolerate vicious lies about my officers. They will be placed on the rotation list as they are now. We will continue to do business with them. But if they do not stop the vicious things that they're doing and saying about my officers, I can't ask my officers to call them to come and take care of business. I can't. And I will take the necessary steps to take them off of our rotation list that just happens to be the same as the Highway Patrol. If somebody gets added to that list tomorrow, they will also be added to our list. And we'll make sure that happens with dispatch between now and the time that we actually have our meeting to discuss protocol and procedures and changes. And I don't want to, you know, I'm not power hungry. Everybody that knows me knows that. I'm willing to work with these administrators and come up with a good, decent plan. I'm even willing to work with the tow truck drivers. Last Tuesday night, one of the tow truck companies outside told me that they would meet me the following morning at 10 o'clock. They never showed. They called and said, and I forget the excuse that they used, that they wouldn't be there. Well, then this week I learned that after I left their meeting, Mr. Cox of Ambassador Towing informed him, we all got to stick together. Don't go and talk to the sheriff. The professional thing to do would be to come to the sheriff's office and sit down and talk with me. I'll be happy to try to address it and fix the problem. As far as the letter that you have in your packet, I hope that when you review that letter, you also contact the Highway Patrol, because it was not the Macon County Sheriff's Office. That was not said. It was actually the Highway Patrol. And there's a whole lot more to that story of why Nathan's Towing was utilized, and when the towing company that the individual that the person wanted, the trooper made the decision not to call that person because he had already had and I don't even know if it was Nathan's. I'm assuming it was Nathan's, but he already had Nathan's there hooking the vehicle up, and it was 30 minutes afterwards. So there's more to that story. And as far as my Facebook, holy cow. My Facebook, the photo that they're talking about, I took with my photo in my community, in the Colasage community, and it was a wreck. I'm not going to say who the wreck was involved, but it was a former fellow employee with me, not for my agency, but within the county. It was a horrible wreck. I can't believe, and everybody that responded to that wreck cannot believe he survived that wreck. I posted it from my phone to let everybody know, because my community, the Highlands Road, everybody in here knows how dangerous the Highlands Road is. And I posted it on my Facebook. There was 3 photos. Do you have all 3 photos? Or you just have one?
Just that was the one we saw.
All 3 photos were the photos of the car. The car all mangled in the bushes, the car close up, and then a car being put onto the record service. Now, I think his complaint is, as far as my endorsement that he's talking about, is because it has Nathan's paint and body or whatever it says on the side. And if you look, there is a driver in the vehicle. As I was snapping the photo, he opened the door to get out, to go back to take care of however they do their stuff. And it is not an endorsement. I do routinely thank Nathan. He's always dependable. He's always there. And I appreciate every time that he comes out for us. I also appreciate Walter Hunter and several other of these tow trucks. But as Macon County deputies and as sheriff, whether I like Lloyd Cox or my officers like Lloyd Cox, doesn't matter. The policy and the procedures that I have set prior and again, we don't make that decision. He's on the list, he will be called. And it's not fair to anybody to not be called on that list. I think I've resolved that with my officers, and I feel good. I feel good about that meeting, and I've had my thumbs on it, and I don't think I said it, but also on the new form, the change I made to the form is that supervisors are now required to sign that form. the owner the car's being towed, the officer that's involved, and also the supervisor. And then it's also in our procedures that I will then receive. That way I will know that things are being done properly. We're not perfect, but we sure try hard to be perfect, because we are sure expected to be perfect.
Just to close and share what we had talked about, Mr. Chairman, is that, 6 months down the road, that this liaison and the sheriff and some of these tow truck drivers will be getting together to review that policy.
We'll review the numbers.
We'll review and how the procedure's moving along, and I think that's the way we can certainly keep a closer check on it, and the sheriff agrees.
Absolutely.
And we'll be more than happy. We appreciate the sheriff being cooperative, and of course, these gentlemen over here is what he's there day to day to take care of them, so. Thank you, Sheriff. Anything to add?
From whether it was the homeowner or owner request, highway patrol, sheriff's department, excuse me. Wherever they received that call, that was the record that was called. There was no errors on that side at all. So, other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Mr. Steele, do you have anything to?
No, I don't have anything to add, anything.
Okay. Anything else? I think.
Any suggestions, Walter, is Walter still here? He's got a ball game, I know.
Yeah, it's over then.
Oh, it's over. Is there anything else to add, Walter, to this discussion in open forum while we're here?
I think, Robbie, if everything goes as Robbie has said, it's gonna be smooth sailing. That's not the way it's been for the last couple of years. So we'll just have to go from again.
Understood. Mr. Beal is our liaison. We'll challenge you to keep up with Sheriff Holland and make sure this happens.
Could have been accomplished. Could have been accomplished easily.
Coordinate the activities.
My office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cox, did you have something to add?
No, brother.
I'm gonna quote Ronnie Haven tonight. I do wish that before Robbie had made some statements, that he had had all of his information correct before he accuses me of lying and telling stories about Drake's. Drake's Towing did not show up at that meeting from what they told me because they were showing their house. And the fact that he stands here tonight and accuses me of lying, I don't appreciate that either. If he's got proof to back up this, just like there's all kinds of accusations that I could make, but I don't have proof for it. If he's gonna call me a liar, I want him to have the proof to back it up too. He's called me a liar. I know some of these officers up here, and I don't think any one of them can ever say that whenever I was out at a scene they were working where I towed a vehicle, that I was ever disrespectful to any of them. And I don't appreciate him indicating or alluding to the fact that I was. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, I think we need to move on. Mr. Hunter said if this is an acceptable plan, it sounds reasonable to me that we'd be able to get that report back from the sheriff through our liaison. So if everybody's comfortable with that, we'll drive on. Okay, Jim. And this is back to the public comment, other than the towing issue. Austin Brooks, is Austin here? Hey, Austin.
Hello, I'm Austin Brooks. I'm a resident of Macon County.
Austin, give them just, I think we have some of our folks are leaving, we'll expect you to give them just a second to leave. We appreciate you guys here. Appreciate your time.
My name's Austin Brooks. I'm a resident of Macon County. I live in 1470 Dillard Road up in Highlands. And I'm speaking on the behalf of Dr. Bill McClarney tonight, who's been a resident for 28 years and has worked with many of the nonprofits and conservation practices. I would like to make a very general statement about the planning board, the idea of regulation, the environment, the economy, property rights, the proper role of government, and a whole lot of other things. I'm trying to understand why, if we all really care about this place, things have gotten so ugly. I'll start with the concept of regulation. There seems to be an idea in some circles that members of the planning board enjoy imposing regulations. If there is such a person, someone who gets pleasure out of regulating or being regulated, I don't want to know him, and I don't want him on a county advisory board. Yet anyone will admit there is some need for regulation. The only alternative is total anarchy, and that this is a legitimate function of government. The discussion has to be about individual regulations, not the concept. It's not about anarchy versus dictatorship, it's about what's best for all of us. In a document about the huge flood which swept through Macon County in 1970, I learned that at the time the town of Franklin still discharged raw sewage to the Little Tennessee River at several points. The solution was regulatory, imposed by the Federal Clean Water Act of 1972. I'm sure there was grumbling at that time, but does anyone want to undo that body of regulation? With growth comes the need for more regulation. If you move to Atlanta, you assume you're not going to keep a goat in your yard or let your dog run loose. If your goal is to minimize regulation, you should think hard about the ongoing urbanization of this county. That may constitute a dilemma to which nobody has all the answers. But I think the planning board is to be applauded for trying to get ahead of the curve with suggestions for preventive action. You may disagree with some of their conclusions, but it is absolutely wrong to attribute their actions to any motive other than a concern for our welfare as a community, which certainly includes trying to keep something of our rural character. All of this is wrapped up in a larger debate which is going on nationally, even worldwide. It won't be resolved in Macon County, but we owe it to ourselves to think about it. I refer to the question of what is the proper role of the economy in regulating our daily lives. There is a point of view that the economy, left alone, will fix everything. If this viewpoint had prevailed in the 1970s, might not we still be discharging untreated sewage and industrial waste into the Little Tennessee River? How much time and money was wasted at that time in trying to avoid responsibility for the public good through regulation of water pollution? Please remember, the members of the planning board live and work in the same economy as the rest of us. Their responsibility is to make recommendations about land use planning, which, unless you think unrestrained economic growth is a panacea.
Austin, your 5 minutes is up. If you would conclude if you go to finish.
In the current climate of economic fear, it perhaps understandable if we regress. Understandable, but not justifiable. We need to encourage the commissioners, the planning board, and all others involved to continue to have the courage to balance the myriad concerns with which they are presented. Not allow themselves to be intimidated by any interest group and plan for a future Macon County in which we all can take pride in.
Thank you, Austin, very much. James Birch.
I just want to say a few words. I grew up here in Macon County, and I first started seeing when real estate started moving into the Appalachian Mountains, and what a disaster it was, especially for low income and our kids and grandkids. But the steep slope development, or the plan for that, is the best thing you could ever have. Because I worked for the Forest Service government 34 years, and the road is even 12 or 15% is getting steep. Can you imagine a road that's 30 and 40 and 50%? And what happened was, years ago, these people brought up these huge tracts of land, and they surveyed them out from the bottom to the top, and it was real narrow, and a lot of them did not have enough room to put even a switch back in. And when you got a road going straight up a narrow lot, you ain't got there ain't no choice but that water to go straight down. And I know there's some lots right above me, up above me right now, and if I don't buy them just to save that, my watershed, my spring and my water down below can be taken out. And there's nowhere to build on that. Just because it's for sale, because it's there, does not mean that it can be built on. When you break that root system, there's nowhere for that water to go anymore. And this county is based on the interests of a few small interest groups, the main one being real estate. And like I said, I'm totally against it. I don't think it's constitutional. I don't think it's where capitalism, where greed went wrong, and it allowed for a monopoly and for something to open up. In my opinion, the only way it'll ever work out is between 1995 and 2005, if you took a chart and showed where land started going up, it went like this. And then from 1995 to 2005, it went off the charts. Nothing could sustain it. Who was being a part of it? Nobody. And it collapsed. And to me, that's the reason our economy is in the mess it is now in county real estate. And the National Board of Realtors and the Macon Board of Realtors or whoever, they're wanting this big road to get back on again and pick up where it left off. That was where the mess, that's where we got into the mess to start with. Nobody was a part of it but the 1% retired people moving in here, and it priced itself out to where the people that grew up here and the native people cannot have access to their own land anymore. And you can go back and some people say, well, it's their own fault for selling their land off. No, it wasn't, because when you have the buyer and the seller and you didn't have a third party, but you can't have real estate and have a third party and have a monopoly the way it is, and you just deal with a few percent people. And after World War II, men for the first time, families left the country and went to the cities. During the 60s and 70s and well, later than that, you had a mass migration of these people coming back to the country, whereas before they left the country and went to the cities. And it disrupted everything and caused the market there that they were a part of, and they were retiring, building their homes, except for maybe some younger people from Atlanta or Florida. But most of it dealt with the older generation that had that wealth, and you'll never have that kind of wealth again that that World War II boom generation had. And we couldn't compete with that. And I guess I can say the only thing we can do right now is make a push, and you never hear no politicians politicking on this, is to make real estate illegal and let it go back between the buyer and the seller. Because it's nothing constitutional about it right now. Nobody's a part of it, except about a few percent people. I don't know what else to say. And this steep slope development, some people say it's not your, I get to do with my land what I want to, but it's another thing when they build in above you and put a road in above you and it washes down on you and takes you out. And you don't have no say-so in it, and that's the way it's been. And Diamond Falls is one example of it on the head of Dills Creek, and that's where I grew up. Our creek's running, it'll never be the same again, because these ordinances was not put in place years ago, and this thing's been kicked around for 50 years now, or whatever time the Sue Walter said, and nothing being done. And those houses back in there, you ought to drive back in there and see that. You ought to see the roads. That's just one of them. And I had seen Wildflower. That's another one I heard was a disaster. And the greed, it was the greed that set in over, there was nothing, it wasn't selling a few years ago. And everything collapsed on account of it. And some of you on the board right here are in building, but that doesn't mean you can't still build. You just got to build in the right way. And there's some pieces of land that you just can't build on. It's too steep. Our water is precious, and it's taking out our water down below. And our water will never be pure again like it used to be. That's about all.
Thank you, James. Yep, we appreciate your comment. Next, we have Mr. Bruce Oliver. Bruce.
Yes, thank you. Please pardon me, I had no intention of speaking today, but I just have some things that I feel like I should say. Unfortunately, I have not even cleared this with my wife, so I'll have to answer to that later. But there are a few things I would like to say. In October of 2010, we purchased a lot at Diamond Falls. We decided that we would build a house there and retire here because we like this area. And we have no kids. We're just what you want. We have no kids in school, so we don't take up the tax money. We're just here to spend our retirement money. But then what happened? We were promised when we bought this property 4 things. Aside from the fact that the property would be buildable, and a lot of the lots were not. But ours was. We were promised use of the clubhouse.
which has been locked for most of the time we have had the lock. We have been unable to get in there. Off and on, we can't get in. The swimming pool stayed locked for the entire summer, and of course didn't even have a chair to sit on if you ever got in, but you couldn't. So no one was able to use any of this. Now let's take the other things besides that, the more important things. The water. Water was delayed for approximately a year. Over and over, there was one delay after another. Our contractor had to put in tiles without water into our house. Can you imagine this? I mean, and this all had to be brought. Electricity was the next thing. It too was delayed for approximately a year. Our contractor had to use generators for every bit of the electricity, for everything. It upped the cost of our house by at least $30,000. And the contractor, we think, did an excellent job. And he won't make any money on it for his excellent job. It's all gone because of this incompetency on the part of the people from whom we bought the property, or I won't say necessarily incompetency or whatever, whatever you want to call it. Now the roads. We were told all the roads would be paved. I asked that day when the paving would begin, and I was told, quote, pretty much right now. Then 2 or 3 months later, I was told winter's coming on, we won't be able to do any paving until the spring. Then there were various other excuses, and this fall, the same thing. We can't pave until spring because winter's coming on. Same thing. Then we had I'm sorry, I'm a bit disorganized. We were told on the roads, finally we were told later that, quote, they had decided, well I won't quote, maybe I'm paraphrasing, I don't know, but they had decided not to pave. They had decided instead to just keep the roads well graveled, but they haven't been well graveled. Most of the time there's no gravel on there either. And certainly no paving. There's a truck that's been parked for 6 months I don't know why it's there, but it's I don't know who's paying for this. We're still paying dues for upkeep on this thing. Homeowners pay so much, I don't know what, my wife handles that, but we pay it, and I think it just goes in somebody's pocket because almost nothing is done. A few little things, but probably 1/10 of it is spent and the rest of it is pocketed. I would like to say we had I am personally a strong believer in limited government. I do not think government belongs in a lot of things that government gets into. But there is one thing that I heard one time was the most proper function of government, and that is to prevent force and fraud. Now, I don't contend fraud has occurred because I don't know the legal definition of fraud, and I don't wish to make an accusation I can't back up. But it seems like to me it certainly borders on it if it's not. And it goes on and on with no sign of these promises ever being filled. Finally, we got water. Finally, we got electricity. Although we had some problem with water, there's a big hole in our driveway which was left that way. And in fact, we mentioned, they were asked one time, we were asked if by the Black Bear Paving Company that was supposed to do this, some man that was with them, Mr. L.C. Jones, I believe, had asked my wife if needed any gravel on our road. And I said, she said, well, I mean, you know, on our driveway, we don't have any much, but we don't really, you know. He said, well, I'm gonna be putting some gravel out there. Anyway, I'll leave some on there. And so he said, I'll put some on there.
Mr. Alderman.
In fact, what happened was that in fact, what happened is on the main road, on the road that leads out of there, about a quarter of a mile from the house, gravel was dumped. And we got a bill for $370. We sent a certified letter to Black Bear Paving Company to protest this and say we had no intention of paying it, and they knew what they could do with it. The letter certified came back marked refused. It was never opened. We still had it. But at any rate, if government needs to protect against force and fraud. I don't know what fraud is, as I said. I don't know the legal definition. You decide. But I wanted to tell you some of what has happened to us. And I feel like that we have some of the better deals because our lot at least was buildable. A lot of the lots were not.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman.
Sure.
Very much. Some of those things you mentioned, you know, certainly probably aren't under our jurisdiction. I wouldn't.
They should be under yours if they're not.
Well, if
I don't know about all this matter, but it kind of reminds me of a song.
What's your name? Sir? What's your name, sir?
My name is Floyd Cruz.
Hey, Mr. Cruz, do you want to speak to the board?
Sir?
I said you want to speak to the board about a matter.
I can't speak now?
No, you can. That's fine. We just wanted to recognize you. I didn't have you on the list to speak, but that's fine. We'll add you to that.
I want to know if I could say something.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
That ain't the first time I've ever been rejected for not speaking.
No, you can't. No, you can't. You can't. I'm saying yes. Please speak. I just didn't have you on the list to recognize you.
You didn't have me on the list.
Correct. You're good, though. Go right ahead.
There used to be a song that we heard years ago, went something like this. Move over, little dog, for the big dogs are moving in. But with the best interpretation of that is this. Move over, redneck, the white collars are moving in. That's the way it is in most cases in the world today. There's one scripture that I think about. The scripture says, you'll have the poor with you always. And then there's another scripture that goes along with that. The rich will oppress the poor. And usually the people that's in authority, in politics and in religion and everything else, they're rich. And the reason they get elected and everything, they have enough money to pay for a lot of negative ads and everything. And usually the rich get in authority. Well, this is what it comes to. The majority may not always rule, but they're not always right.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I'd like to go back to Mr. Oliver. Mr. Turner, if it's okay if we could address that.
Can I say something?
Yeah. I'd like to ask Derek.
Can I say something?
No, hang on just a second. I'd like to recognize Derek about our subdivision ordinance. Because
yeah, and I've spoken out.
We'll get
First of all, we've worked extensively in the planning office, and it's been a pleasure working with the Olivers and the developers at Diamond Falls.
Who are the developers at Diamond Falls?
Shirley Waffo and Mr. L.C. Jones is her agent.
I know LC.
Yeah, Mr. L.C.
And who's the other?
He works as her agent. Shirley Waffo.
She's not here.
She's from Atlanta.
She's not the one that owns like $10 million property.
She is. I think. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure of her.
Macon, Georgia. Okay.
But with the subdivision ordinance, and I've spoke to this at the planning board meeting before, what the subdivision ordinance does is it establishes at its base a minimum standards that all subdivisions that are constructed in Macon County must abide by before that we can approve the plat to be recorded in the Register of Deeds office. When somebody is buying in a subdivision, if it is unrecorded at the time, then there's really, that person is assuming a certain degree of risk in purchasing that subdivision. In this instance in particular, what happened, it was in the preliminary stages. In other words, the land, once the land is subdivided, then that's when they submit a preliminary plat to the planning department. We can approve that preliminary plat that authorizes them to go ahead and begin making improvements. So in this case, they bought a lot in phase 2 that was in the preliminary phase. In other words, the planning department has looked at it and said you can begin. Now before a final plat can be approved, there has to be all the improvements made. And the improvements are not necessarily paved roads. It's minimum standards. So gravel roads will work for the subdivision ordinance. What we're looking at is road widths, surface on the roads, whether it be gravel or paved, road grades, things of that nature, homeowners association being established and referenced to take care of the maintenance agreement. So those are the things that the subdivision ordinance kind of looks at. We have no way of knowing what was promised to the purchasers by the realtors or whoever they were told the roads were going to be paved or anything of that nature. We have no way of seeing to that. But in this case, because these final improvements were not going to be made before the final plat could be approved, a bond was issued. In other words, the bond was issued to say if these improvements are not met before the final plat is recorded, that Macon County, you have an avenue of ensuring that these improvements are met in the event that the owners default or something happens. You have this much money. We worked with the development, and as we were going through it and they were making these improvements, the planning department realized that this bond wasn't sufficient enough to cover the cost that was needed to complete the work that was still left to do. So we worked with our attorney, with the attorney representing the development group, and we got on a common ground and we got an increased bond. And actually that bond is still on that phase, the new bond that has just been implemented. And it's for like, the bond more than doubles. So we have more than enough funds to cover that project in the event that it goes into default. And I don't see that happen. I see it getting finished, and speaking with the developer, these promises that were made will be fulfilled in the spring when weather is more conducive to paving. But in the meantime, as for a safety net, which the subdivision ordinance does create, the people out there in phase 2 can have a safety net that if these final improvements are not made, then Macon County has the avenue to go in there and make these improvements as necessary. So there is that safety net there, but like I say, we've worked with the development group. They've been great to work with, and they've done everything we've asked them to do. We've asked them to bring certain roads into standards that were not up to standards. They did that. They went into discussions with us, and they came back and gave us a larger bond that everyone felt more comfortable with. So they worked with us in that aspect. So there's nothing that's been done thus far that I can see that would be anything to raise an eyebrow.
Have you met with Oliver?
Yes, sir.
Have you met with Mr. Dan Kelly?
No, sir. That was the first time I've ever heard of Mr. Dan Kelly.
He's also a Diamond Falls, I think.
Okay. The Olivers, the reason I met with the Olivers is because they came to a planning board meeting and voiced these concerns. And we addressed that at that time, and I kept in contact with the Olivers throughout the whole process as we were getting this new bond initiated. I can get in touch with Mr. Kelly if you'd like. Is that email new?
That email was, no, 2 days ago.
Oh, did he send it?
He sent some questions. I think Al Slater brought this in, but it's more along the same lines as Mr. Oliver just.
Okay.
Yeah, give. And just see if there's anything, and you can explain to all of us, just
right.
And the Oliver's like you can explain to him, but you're working with the developer seems to be doing what he's supposed to. We have increased the bond amount.
Yes, sir.
Which we did do.
The bond amount is not for all the roads.
Yes,
The bond is all of them sort of things.
the bond amount covers everything in phase 2 that's left to do, and that's the roads, the hydro seeding, the surfacing of the roads, the water through phase two.
Yes, sir, but in order to leave, we're in phase two, but in order to leave phase two, we have to go through phase one. We were told that road would be paved.
Right.
It wasn't touched.
Yes, sir.
And it won't be.
Give you some latitude, we've obviously been pretty,
Everyone was told that.
yeah. That, I think if you're gonna have a discussion between you two, you need to do that.
Okay.
Aside from here.
Okay.
We appreciate the comments, but, if, Derek, could you follow up with these folks?
Yes, sir.
And report back to the board about
Absolutely.
that, since we were involved in the bond, so. Mr. Hall, we are aware of that, and, we appreciate Derek will continue to work with you on that. Thank you for your comments. Nope, we've got, we have two more. Mr. Jimmy Goodman. If you want, I don't know if Jimmy's, I need to go through the list. Is it?
That's it.
Jimmy's right behind you. We got Lonnie Cruz, then we'll add you to the list.
Mr. Chairman, I was standing out in the hall and I was wanting to leave here. I didn't really want to say anything else. But I sat and watched you guys banter back and forth about what was right about talking about fellow citizens, and especially on the planning board. Okay. I was nominated back to the planning board, and I love serving on the planning board, and I love all the people that I work with, and I try my best to do the job honorably as much as I know how. But during the time that I was being reappointed to that planning board, there was special meetings called, and my name was drugged through the mud. And I ask y'all tonight to please pass the term limits and get the politics out of it. There are a lot of good people in this county that want to serve on that planning board that have never got a chance. And I think it's because of politics. And I appreciate you letting me speak. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm gonna say this, in regards to that. We're talking about term limits, talking about time of service and that kind of thing. And I think it'd help all of you guys to understand that at least, well, this whole board is fairly new. Mr. Beal's longest served. I think he's in the second term. Mr. Cuppers has served 3 years. I have served about a year. Mr. Hagan served just a shade over a year. And Mr. Tate has served a month, or two months. So a lot of these things that happen to the planning board and all that, we're having to learn about. We weren't here. And you know, so at least.
I just asked you to take politics out of it.
I understand, and I couldn't agree more. Okay, we have Lonnie Cruz. Is Lonnie here?
Hey, my name's Lonnie Cruz. Excuse me, I've been sick.
You turn the microphone down a bit. Just point back forward. There you go.
You know, I live in Franklin. We moved here last year, me and my wife and my 3 small children. A lot of people say that they want an honest politician who cares about the people and fights for the small man. But when they got it in front of them, they don't even recognize it. When we moved here, me and my family were homeless. We didn't have a place to go. I met Ron Haven. Ron, without even asking for anything, he put us up for almost a month for free. He's done nothing but be honest to us the whole time we've been here. And I've seen him do this not just for us, but for many other people. And y'all don't know about Ron. You know, I believe in the term limits. That should go for any form of government, no matter where you're at, whether it be a high or local level, because it gives a fair and honest way for society to view everything. As far as Mr. Bill, you said that Ron was wrong for calling out Mr. Penland and saying that he shouldn't have done that. Well, if Ron believes that, then the Constitution gives us the right of free speech and also the right to overthrow government at any time that we think it's not for the people.
So you don't overthrow the government?
Well, that's a form of government. And it is a form of
Not
speech.
Macon County call somebody a dictator, not a form of government, in my opinion. We just differ on that thing.
Well, not having term limits would be a form of dictatorship. If you want to do something with the committee, make a committee that oversees all the other committees that does investigations of who has personal interest in what. That's what I would think. I mean, that would be the smart thing. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. I believe we had one more. Was it Mr. Jones? Let me get, is it LC? LC Jones.
Yeah, I want to say something on behalf of Shirley Walpole that owns Diamond Falls. There's some accusations made here of fraud. There's no fraud. There is a homeowners association that's run out of a group from Charlotte. It's online. There's a key at the clubhouse all the time this Saturday for all the homeowners to go in and out. The pool's been open all year. I mean, not, it ain't now, but it was open last year. They had the pool company in town services the pool, and the accusations that they couldn't get into the clubhouse, that's false. And as far as the roads being paved, we paved Shirley did not make a commitment to pave the road on the first section. She made a commitment to pave the road on phase 2, which Derek was talking about. She did not make that commitment. There were some commitments made by some real estate people that were selling property that all the roads that would be made, that would be paved. Shirley plans on paving things as things progress, but she did not make no commitments or put nothing in writing that all the roads on phase 1 that would be paved. And I just want to set that record clear. And then the Kelly thing, I think I heard something about that today. When he bought his lot, and I'm not for sure what the email said, but when he bought his lot, there was there was a commitment in there for the developer to grade the lot out, which the developer did. They come in and graded the lot out. They accepted the grading that was on the lot. The builder went to build a house. Now he's got the house built, and there's a problem with the lot that was graded that they accepted. Now they're coming back after the developer, Shirley, and say that she's got to go back and redo stuff that she already done one time. Just to answer some of those questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. That is all the folks I had signed up for public comment, and we've gotten through 3 of about 14 items.
Again, I made it clear, I don't know what the definition of fraud is, and so I did not say that there was fraud committed in any way.
If
I don't know the definition of it.
If you guys need a break as much as I do, we've been sitting here for 3.5 hours. We're gonna we'll close the public comment period and we recess. We'll take a short break, about 15 minutes.
I reckon I'll get that back.